much. Um, Now I give the word to Alex Moffett-Bateau. Uh,
Is it working now? Okay, my apologies. I woke up yesterday and didn't have a voice anymore, so hopefully you can hear me. So my name is Dr. Alex Moffett-Bateau. I am a political scientist. I have a PhD in political science from the University of Chicago, and I'm an assistant professor at John Jay College. My focus in my work is on the politics of Black people in the United States, in particular, Black women and Black women living below the poverty line. I've also been an Olosha, an initiated priest in Lukumi for 11 years now. I was initiated in Chicago by my godparents, Asabi, Agonogolou, and Baba Willie, Ilari Oba Ramos. Michelle is my elder. And in our religious traditions, I'm still a baby, right? So when my younger sister and Michael asked me to participate in this, I knew I had to bring Michelle, because in our traditions, the elders are really the ones who speak on behalf of us all, right? And it's it's seen as a real lack of iwe pale and good character to speak in front of them. So I'm grateful to be here with the elders today, and I'm grateful for you giving me room to speak. So as a political scientist, I'm not going to try and, answer kind of theological questions that would be best left to my elders. But what I can do is talk about some of the geopolitical elements of what we're talking about today, right? So one of the things that I see happening a lot in conversations about people throughout the African diaspora, and particularly about our non-Christian religious traditions, is there is a desire to prove to the outside world that we're not demonic, that we have good character, that we practice iwe pele, that we're at peace, right? Similar to how our siblings in Islam have really had that battle for the last 20 some years now, right? And that makes sense to me to the extent that that is helpful to Black folks throughout the US and other parts of the diaspora in the West Indies, on the continent, right? If that can help us engage in a clear understanding of our own cultural traditions, of our own contribution to this world, then I'm okay with that. But I think sometimes what happens is it's an attempt to prove to these bodies like the UN or the US government or governments in Europe that we're good people and that we deserve protection, and see, we're peace-loving like everyone else. And I think that's a mistake. I am not interested in proving to the powers that be that I'm not something to be feared, because I think that the political power of our communities should be feared, right? I think that we are at a point in, what historians call the long civil rights movement, that we understand that simply attempting to prove how nice and kind we are isn't going to push back white supremacy and racial capitalism, of which the UN embodies, right? The UN has been a tool to colonize almost every person, country, place that is represented in this room. Even the underfunding of this forum and the way in which many elders had to stand in line for hours yesterday is absolutely an indicator of how little the UN cares about the Black people in this building. And knowing that's the case, we have to be a lot more serious about deciding What are we ready to do in the face of that? Again, I know I sound ridiculous. I'm sorry. This was way better yesterday when I had a voice. But what are we prepared to do, right? What are we prepared to build so that we're not constantly at the whims of whichever colonial power decides they want to be interested in Black people this week? So, understanding that, like, absolutely, I want us to think about how we can develop cultural traditions that teach our young people pride, good character, and a semblance of balance. But I also don't want us to use the opportunities that we have to come together globally, the few opportunities we have to do that, to not talk seriously about what are we going to do after this forum is over. So when I think about the history of Black collective global organizing, whether you're talking about Paul Robeson and We Charge Genocide in 1952, if you're talking about the many Black activists globally that came together across the world in the 1970s, Maya Angelou, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, right? Kwame Nkrumah, all of these people use these opportunities to come together, not just to make speeches and to educate the white colonial powers, but to also organize and mobilize for going forward. And so if we want to truly use these convenings to make sure that African spiritual traditions are protected, then we have to start talking about, okay, what do we do next? Where do we meet next, right? Who can we get the money needed from, right? Because it always comes down to the money. So, you know, and the Bible from Brazil makes a good point, right? Because when I talked to my godmother, Asabi, about whether I should do this panel, right? Because I talk to my elders before making these kind of commitments, because I always start stuff. Is we also, you know, her first question is like, well, why are we talking about that and not the murders of the Black women in Nigeria and Brazil? Why are we talking about the mass kidnappings of Black women in Brooklyn, right? And to Ia Michelle's point, we also have to talk about the slow erosion of the protections of Black religious traditions here in the United States. In the 1990s, Lukumi priests did tremendous political organizing in the courts and on the streets in order to garner some semblance of protection for their religious rights, sacrifices, ability to legally hold animals, and so on and so forth. And we're now seeing many of those protections eroded. We're now seeing priests arrested, right? As more and more support globally is developed for kind of ecotourism, animal protections, and so on. And to be clear, these are positive developments that I think we all should be participating in. However, they've also had the unintended effect of harming the ability of certain groups to engage in their religions in peace, right? So knowing that, right, to answer Michael's question, you know, why do we need to understand Iwe Pele to garner protection for African diaspora religions? I would say we don't, right? We don't have to prove our inherent goodness in order to deserve the protections as actual human beings who do the large majority of the labor, who were the so-called first line workers during the pandemic. We don't have to be good to be protected and to be treated as equals in our own cultures. Do I want to have good character for my own peace? Sure. But first and foremost, I say that rather than being concerned with goodness, let's make sure that our communities are safe, that we're able to raise children in our traditions without having to worry about something happening to them, so that kids don't have to reject their religious traditions of their families so that they feel like they fit in college and all these other things. They don't want to be called demonic at school and so on. I mean, I can't tell you how many young people I talk to about how they're bullied at school because they had to wear all white for a year, or because somebody on the block saw them bringing in a goat to their house or whatever. And so we have to do that work, right? So when we think about what our communities need, I think the real character trait that we must build now is courage. And it is the courage to reject the affirmation of white supremacy and racial capitalism. It is the courage to reject the comfort of taking the privileges of misogyny. It means having the courage to love and be loved by Black people, by dark-skinned. It means having the courage to love and be loved by Black people, by dark-skinned people, right? So that you don't have young women all over the world bleaching their skin, right? What's the point of practicing Black diasporic religions if our young people don't learn to cherish their bodies and their spirits? So for me, that's the work. And I encourage all of us gathered here today to commit to that work together when we move forward. Let's figure out what we need in order to gather, to organize, and to mobilize real political commitments so that our children don't have to meet again here in 50 years. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much.